have some of the wildest and weirdest dreams, the most bizarre, fantastical, and imaginative spectacles that my little brain has ever produced. It's entirely beyond the limits of my own talents to just create those. Where do they originate, and are these really my visions, my dreams? Quite often my dreams are actually better than my books. I only wish that I could tell stories that were as creative and unpredictable and compelling. When I ask the question, where do dreams come from, I'm very serious. Welcome to the Chris Heimerdinger channel. It must be Tuesday morning. We release these every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We've done this now for about 10 weeks, so give us some feedback. We'd love to know how the channel is looking, how it's going, how it's feeling. Today, I wanted to talk about revelation. Not just any kind, but a specific kind that most people don't even think of as revelation. Myself, I absolutely 100% believe that this phenomenon fits in that category because of personal experience that has demonstrated to me that it is. What is, first of all, revelation? A stream of vision, if you like, that gives you knowledge and wisdom, insight and instruction. And then we take that and turn it into opportunities that bless our lives or the lives of those around us, those that we love. When you look at it that way, then the topic definitely fits into the revelation category. Or if you want to be more clinical, the source of information that enters our minds seemingly out of nowhere from a resource over which you have no control, which for most people is exactly true. And then this info educates our minds, expands our souls, and prompts us to take action. Now, I am talking about dreaming. I'm talking about dreams, the visions that we have while we are fast asleep. Now, most often the one that we have just before we wake up. We're told that we enter REM sleep and dream numerous times during any given night. But the one that we remember most normally is the one that is in our heads before or just at the moment when we awaken. To start, let me just confess, I have some of the wildest and weirdest dreams. Maybe that's less of a statement and more of a confession. Maybe it's a confession one might expect from a storyteller, standard fare, but I suspect that many of you out there can relate to this. Occasionally, I've conversed with someone who says, I suppose I have dreams, but I never seem to remember them after I wake up. My son kind of talks like that. We all have nights like that, but I'm pretty sure for a person to claim they never remember their dreams, that is not usual. Virtually everyone at some time or another experiences dreams they remember vividly, possibly for the rest of their lives. And many people, including prophets of God, have kept detailed records of their dreams, even dreams that at the time they wrote them down may have seemed to have no particular meaning. I must admit, some of my own dreams are the most bizarre, fantastical, and imaginative spectacles that my little brain has ever produced. The construction of the plot, the dialogue of the characters, sometimes it seems it's entirely beyond the limits of my own talents to just create those. So where do they come from? Where do they originate? And probably most importantly, are these really my visions, my dreams? Or did these visions of the night originate somewhere else, somewhere beyond the unconscious synaptic connections and biochemical explanations that a scientist might provide to us? First, let me tell you about a dream I had some years ago while my son was serving a mission in a foreign country. The first time I wrote about this dream was the very day after it occurred. Even now, years later, I can't tell you if it has any particular relevance to my life or my career. The dream was about two missionaries in a foreign country. And it might have been, I don't know, somewhere behind the Iron Curtain, is what I remember. My son at the time was serving in Ukraine, but I'm not sure if the dream was that specific. Might have been Romania or Bulgaria. But I've never been to those places. My son happened to be, as I say, in the eastern side of Ukraine, but this was years before the outbreak of the extensive war that's going on right now. Anyway, the dream wasn't really specific about a lot of things. I don't even recall if my son was in the dream. It was just about a pair of missionaries. One of these missionaries witnesses a murder. The murder was connected with some very powerful elements of organized crime that were embedded in that country. The oligarch or mobster or whatever term works best was arrested, but any kind of conviction to this organized criminal was dependent upon the testimony of one of the elders. His companion, for whatever reason, did not get close enough to see the crime, or it wasn't clear to him, or whatever. The trouble is that the murderer had shady connections that tied him to very popular and powerful leaders in the government. Also, the presence of the church in this country was very tenuous at best, and there were ongoing debates in its parliament as to whether missionaries from this peculiar and unusual church from America should even be allowed to stay. These were just elements of the dream. At the time, I had considerably less knowledge than I have now, I suppose, concerning the politics of that particular region. This stuff just came into my head. Well, as it turned out, this single LDS missionary had the power, because of his testimony, to expose something diabolically rotten, something that threatened to destroy this nation and its fragile political system, which was a fledgling democracy, a corrupt democracy. As a consequence, this elder's decision whether to testify or not to testify would have certainly influenced the powers that be inside of the government to outlaw the church and get all the missionaries booted out of the country, thus destroying the work of the Lord in that particular region of the world. What I remember most about the plot involved images of nail-biting action, chase scenes, and near brushes with death for the two missionaries. It also entailed plot twists involving recently baptized members whose faith and dedication to the church was being tried in the midst of this political turmoil, as well as betrayal and intrigue and mass corruption and crime that in the end would very likely nullify any criminal conviction or positive outcome, even if this elder did give his testimony to the authorities. So the elder was faced with a searing question. Why risk his life or risk hindering the work of the Lord in that nation by doing the right thing? That's a cool idea, right? And yes, it all came to me in a dream. I felt sure that this dream lasted all night long. I've often felt like some of my dreams last all night long. Yeah, I know what they say about REM sleep and how dreams are intermittent and limited to a specific number of minutes during our sleeping our sleeping hours. But I've had the experience of waking up, maybe walking around, maybe getting a drink, whatever, and then as soon as I fall back asleep, the dream seems to pick up right where it left off. And in this case, the dream seemed to go on and on and on. What a roller coaster. It was great. I was on the edge of my seat or the edge of my mattress the entire night. You might wonder, if this idea was so great, then why am I blabbering about it in a public forum like YouTube? The idea might be heard by hundreds or even thousands of people. Well, partly because I got serious doubts if I'll ever get around to writing it. I'm so deeply immersed in other projects, I can't think about much else. Sometimes it seems like the next 20 years of my creative life are already booked. So why would I be given such a vision, such a story? The timing was terrible. I honestly could not use it. There was no way that I could apply it into my creative life. And I really ought to know better than to spout off story ideas. See, I had a bad experience back in the 90s where I was sitting alongside another author at it was an autograph party at the ZCMI in the Pine Ridge Mall in Pocatello, Idaho, back when there were ZCMIs. Must have been a rather slow autograph party because the author and I, who attended this autograph party, had plenty of time to share small talk. And during that conversation, I revealed really the full concept of the story that I had. And it was about a sequel to Mark Twain's masterpiece, Huckleberry Finn. I told him how Mark Twain actually started a sequel, but never finished it. I told him how I would intertwine the Mormon migration into the plot because coincidentally, this happened to be the same time period as Mark Twain's original novel. So I plan to immerse myself in Mark Twain's writings, adopt Huck's and Twain's narrative style, and spin a yarn about Huck and Tom and Jim going west with Brigham Young and the Saints. But truth be told, I was too busy writing other books at the time, almost certainly tennis shoes books. Thus, I never got around to writing the book. Then, lo and behold, a couple years later, this very same author who I sat by in Pocatello, Idaho, published a novel utilizing my exact same idea. Sheesh. I mean, what a guy, right? I'm not going to give you the author's name or any other details because, for all I know, the whole thing was innocent. This author may have literally forgotten where he first heard it. He may have stashed it away in his subliminal memory, and voila. One day he thinks it must have been his to begin with. No biggie. Fact is, if the Lord has blessed me with anything, it's story ideas. I've never lacked ideas. My challenge has always been deciding which idea to pursue next. Honestly, most of my story ideas come to me while I am staring at the blank computer screen. The source doesn't really seem all that miraculous, just the consequences of daily habit and discipline. But at least two of my books are based directly on dreams. The first I've talked about on multiple occasions, and that was my first novel, Tennis Shoes Among the Nephites. The concept came to me in a dream while I was on my mission in Gainesville, Florida. And it was not too many details, but I fleshed them out. The second novel that was based on a dream was Return to Christmas. One night, I just dreamed about this sort of LDS version of The Prince and the Pauper. Twain again, but the truth be told, my Huck Finn thing was not from a dream. I don't remember where that particular idea came from. Probably while I was driving down the interstate, 3 freeway exits beyond the one that I was supposed to take. I'm confident that other novels, or a significant portion of other novels, have also come from dreams. To be blunt, I'd have to say I owe a big part of my income as an artist to dreams. Now, let me clarify a couple things. Really, I think that the only aspect of the actual dream that inspired Tennis Shoes Among the Nephites, the only real thing that I remember was two boys going back in time to the period of the Book of Mormon. I know that Frost Cave, which is a real cave near Cody, Wyoming, was also part of the dream. The Rainbow Room, which is a real legend, although it doesn't involve the Book of Mormon, that was part of the dream as well. But beyond those minor details, I had to flesh out the rest of the plot very much while I was awake. Same with A Return to Christmas. Most of the images from that dream itself were quickly forgotten, probably within hours. It was only the core concept that remained in my head. It's the same with the dream that I described about the missionaries in the Eastern Bloc. What I mentioned here was only a brief outline of the story. Even some of that wasn't really part of the dream. The dream was mostly action and dialogue and dark streets and seedy courtrooms and lots of Russian accents. The whole political intrigue thing was not in the dream, except maybe the organized crime part. I fleshed out the rest of it while I was fully awake. Also in the dream, I happened to be at times I was playing the part of the missionary whose life was threatened, which doesn't really make sense since I haven't been on a mission for decades. But the point is that for me, going to bed at night is often and literally as entertaining as going to the movies. My dreams are frequently that cool. Now, the big question: why? I mean, where do dreams come from? And why am I so blessed? And I deliberately put that in quotes because I'm not quite sure sometimes how that ought to be interpreted. No, that's not true. I do think that it's a blessing. So why is it that I seem to receive such fascinating dreams? Okay, considering the stories that I tell, maybe the fact that I'm a storyteller means that having weird dreams isn't really all that surprising. Here's the thing, and I swear that it's true. Quite often, my dreams are actually better than my books. Sometimes I only wish that I could tell stories that were as creative and unpredictable and intellectually compelling as my dreams. Your dreams are coming from your brain, aren't they? No, I'm telling you, it might seem like the two go together, but I'm convinced that they don't necessarily come from your brain. I can testify with certainty that many of my dreams, maybe even most of my dreams, are not coming from the synaptic connections of my brain. They are coming from somewhere else. So when I ask the question, where do dreams come from? I'm very serious. Everyone probably expects a simple answer. They're from God, right? But I don't quite think it's that simple. I mean, everything comes from God, so you can give that resource to any particular phenomenon. But when it comes to dreams, I'm not even sure if that answer provides the full explanation. One of the reasons I believe that, I mean, not the only reason, but one of the reasons I think God is not the source is because some of my dreams, like probably some of yours, are awful. I mean, generally we call these kinds of dreams nightmares. But for me, even the term nightmare isn't enough to adequately define the kind of dream that I'm talking about. I mean, we usually think of nightmares as our greatest fears coming to life, right? Vampires, demons, werewolves, and spiders, and falling into the abyss. In fact, the earliest memory that I have of any dream I ever experienced was a nightmare about ghosts. I was 3 or 4 years old, and I still remember this in detail. At 3 or 4 years old, I think the only ghost that my little brain even knew about was Casper the Friendly Ghost. Some folks might remember the movie from a few years back with Christina Ricci. Okay, I admit, I actually went to IMDb and looked it up, and this thing came out in 1995. Sheesh, it was almost 30 years ago. As you get older, time seems to just run together, so maybe nobody even remembers that movie. But 30 years before that, back in the 1960s, there was an actual cartoon called Casper the Friendly Ghost.
I wish people wouldn't be scared of me.
Casper is just this friendly floating sheet with eyes. Certainly nothing that gruesome. Not like today with decomposed and the kind that we see in horror movies. I think the whole point of making this cartoon might have been to help kids not be afraid of ghosts. I mean, Casper the Friendly Ghost. Ghosts are not that scary. I mean, look at Casper. Well, the ghosts that I dreamed about when I was 3 or 4 years old were scary. And there were two of them. They were still floating sheets, just like Casper, but their eyes were empty, black holes. and these sheets came creeping around this old decrepit barn to get me. I woke up screaming. So if some old animator involved in that cartoon happens to be watching, then I'm telling you right now, the master plan, if it was to make ghosts less scary to kids, didn't work. Not at all. Still, what I'm talking about, the awful dreams that I've experienced, are sometimes more than nightmares. They usually come to me when I'm sick or when I've eaten way too much before going to bed. The dreams that I have on those nights are truly terrible. Voices and images repeat over and over. I mean, the thing makes no sense. It's illogical. You have these role reversals in the dream, like Paris transforms into my bathtub, or echoes become flocks of birds, and Arnold Schwarzenegger becomes my 2-year-old granddaughter. They're Fellini and Salvador Dali and Edvard Munch mingled, scrambled together, except for the fact that abstract art actually sometimes makes a lot more sense. I got to admit, on certain occasions, these dreams have enthralled me. And I'm like, wow, this must be what it's like to take every illicit drug in the world all at the same time. But more often than not, I'm climbing the walls, and it's like nails on the chalkboard inside my head. So again, what is the source? What is the wellspring of dreams? Certain dreams, I genuinely don't know if it's fair to credit to Heavenly Father or the adversary. Yet they're almost always creative and mind bending and totally entertaining. So I guess it'd be safest and most logical to credit them to Heavenly Father. But for some dreams, would he really want to take credit? Some time ago, I dreamed that my daughter was a serial killer. I mean, where did that come from? Also, I remember when I was a teenager, and this one was particularly strange. Anyone who knows me knows that I can't handle being around cigarette smoke. But both my parents and my stepfather, they smoked, but I hated being anywhere around it. I remember feeling like this even as I was a small child. I don't even like saying the word cigarette or smoke. I just they ugh. I don't know why this topic triggers me like this, but it does. I fully admit it. I mean, it makes no sense. I've always found it difficult to comprehend how anyone finds pleasure in the habit. Well, one time when I was in high school, I dreamed that I tasted tobacco. And in this dream, I was given the full experience of how pleasurable the taste of tobacco really is for those who partake of this habit. Not just the addiction part, but the taste, the pleasure of the experience. I understood it. I experienced it. Now, why would I have a dream like that? I mean, maybe God was trying to help me to feel more empathy toward those who are addicted. I mean, I really couldn't say. Today, I just chalk it up to being another thing that I find fascinating about dreams. Once on my mission, I listened to a talk tape by Truman Madsen on Joseph Smith. Anyone who comes from my era, they probably remember those talk tapes. And Joseph Smith was recorded by Truman Madsen as saying basically this. I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember exact wording. The Lord often comforts us with dreams, even if they have no particular meaning or significance at all. Well, I'm aware of the fact that the Lord uses dreams to inspire, teach, and prepare us. Jacob's ladder was an awesome dream. Joseph in Egypt also had some very inspiring dreams and dream interpretations. Lehi's dreams were magnificent. Even the wife of Pontius Pilate was told in a dream that Jesus Christ was a just man. That's from Matthew 27:19. Not that that dream of Pilate's wife encouraged any particular actions that changed the circumstances or situation or outcome. We all know that Joseph Smith had remarkable dreams. In fact, W. Phelps wrote every detail he recalled of the last dream of Joseph Smith. 2 years 2 days before his martyrdom in Carthage, Illinois. It's a complex and magnificent dream with astonishing symbolism that hints at the death of Joseph and Hiram, and also Joseph's brother Samuel, as well as the fate of the world and Joseph's enemies. It's also a long dream, so I'm going to have to let you guys search it up. Speaking of Joseph Smith's dreams, it's not just the big prophetic ones that matter. He also said that when a man is asleep, he is conversing with the gods or angels or spirits, as the case may be. I mean, think about that. It suggests a direct line to divine communication while we're sleeping. And on another occasion, he taught that a dream could even be the source of revelation that was as good as the Urim and Thummim. Now, that's some serious validation for the importance of dreams. Many scientists and inventors have claimed that groundbreaking ideas came to them from dreams. Frederick August Kekule? I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Kekule.
He was an organic chemist famous for his work with the molecular structure of carbon compounds. He wrote how he was on a train and he fell asleep, and lo, atoms were gamboling before my eyes. I saw how the larger ones formed a chain, dragging the smaller ones after them, but only at the ends of the chain. The cry of the conductor, "Clapham Road," awakened me from my dreaming. I spent a part of the night in putting on paper at least sketches of those dream forms. This was the origin of structural theory. Physicist Johannes Kepler said that he envisioned the fact that Mars rotated on an ellipse in a dream. Scottish physicist James Clerk Maxwell, who wrote the equations of the electromagnetic theory, was once asked how he solved his problems, and he replied, "I dream about them." Paul McCartney claimed that the melody for Yesterday came to him in a dream. John Lennon claimed that the same thing happened to him for his single Dream Number 9. I feel certain that many of us have experienced profound and prophetic dreams. It seems to be a part of the human experience on planet Earth, and maybe for other intelligent beings on other planets. It's one of those things that reminds us again that none of us can claim credit for the ingenious ideas that enter our brains. These ideas already exist. Every idea that our mortal brains have been able to conjure have existed more likely for millions or billions of years. To the person who invented the steam engine or the paperclip, I think it's important to see such visions as gifts. It instills humility. The same inspiration is probably received or has been received by the inhabitants of other planets since the inception of the universe. Not in the same way. I mean, it's surely different in every instance, but surely at the appropriate time, the time that was just right for the inhabitants of that world. Such brilliant notions are just floating around out there. And dreams are often the way that they are conveyed. Often the trick is the ability to cull the gold from the dross. If a dream can successfully be transformed into something useful while the dreamer is fully awake, then it may serve every practical purpose. But if nothing ever comes of the dream, it serves no practical purpose at all. Has anyone else had what I'm about to describe? Because I have, and I have had some ideas come into my head, ideas for stories, clever phrases or sayings, inventions, and then maybe years later, we learn that someone else turned that idea into reality. You think about this thing that has come into the world and think, hey, I thought of that. In fact, I thought of that one first. This is a very different experience, of course, from having someone steal your idea. In this case, you genuinely did receive that idea, while simultaneously, or maybe sometime later, someone else also received it. And the only difference is that this person acted on the idea. They transformed it into something real. Sometimes it may seem like we're being taught a harsh lesson. The next time that you have this kind of an idea, bub, I hope that you will learn the lesson to act on it. But for many, that person might never have the chance to act on it, never even have the opportunity or the tools or the funds. It just brushes across our minds, and apparently, perhaps because we didn't act, it lands somewhere else. Obviously, separating what's useful and what's not useful in the myriad of images that are found in dreams are challenging. It's not easy. But for me personally, I've found that the task is very much worth pursuing. In 1895, President Wilford Woodruff said, "There are a great many things taught us in dreams that are true, and if a man has the Spirit of God, he can tell the difference between what is from the Lord and what is not." And I want to say to my brethren and sisters that whenever you have a dream that you feel is from the Lord, pay attention to it. For a more recent reference to the inspiration that can come to us from dreams, we have Elder Richard G. Scott.
Revelation can also be given in a dream, when there is an almost imperceptible transition from sleep to wakefulness.
Admittedly, I feel I'm only partially successful at benefiting from revelation that's delivered to me in dreams. I confess that I've sometimes felt lazy, so lazy that I never wrote them down, even though the dream was brilliant. And then, of course, what happens after you awaken is it gets progressively more and more foggy with each waking minute until poof, the dream vanishes entirely. Also, sometimes I don't think it's my fault. Some time ago, I had a story idea. It came to me in a dream that I was convinced was the most powerful idea for a story that I have ever received. One of the most powerful story ideas that anyone in human history has received or written down. I wanted to record that dream, write it down very badly, and I would have written it down. But the plot of the dream and the concepts were so complex, so overwhelming, that getting it down quickly was not, I mean, it couldn't happen. I couldn't get it down quickly enough before the structure began to fade and evaporate. I remember asking in my mind, what was the point of that? Why give me such a tremendous idea if I'm just going to forget it within a single hour after I wake up? I literally panicked over this one, but each moment as it passed, the dream grew more and more obscure, and I just couldn't bring it back. Sometimes Providence has smiled, and I've been a bit luckier. I remember when I had this idea for a song, and the song was called Whispered Visions. It was sung by Catherine Nelson, which I put in my movie Passage to Zarahemla.
The ink on the page and the page of the book and the book to my heart brings me peace to my soul. The ink is the word and the word is the thought and the thought is the light of the God of my soul, and it speaks to me, takes all the pain from me, and it speaks to me.
Yeah, that's a few licks from that song. I conceived it while I was fully awake and I was driving home on Bangor Highway from the Salt Lake Airport. Here's my point. That song isn't mine. It was given to me. It came to me virtually and wholly intact. I hummed it in my head over and over, but then I arrived home and I got distracted, perhaps heard some other music in the background, and suddenly it was gone. I mean, I'd lost it entirely. For an artist, few things are more depressing than losing a great idea. And that night, I was very depressed. So before I went to bed, I knelt down and I prayed for this song idea to come back to me. And Heavenly Father heard that prayer, because the next morning, just as I was emerging from that dream state we all experience before waking, the tune came back. It came back lock, stock, and barrel. Every note, the verses, the chorus, the bridge was fully restored in my mind. And this time I was smart enough to sing it into a digital recorder. I wish I had more answers on the nature of dreams. If nothing else, the dream I described at the beginning made at least one positive contribution to my art. It compelled me to go back and rewrite a scene in one of my Tennis Shoes novels. This is from Tennis Shoes Adventure Series, Book 9, Seers and Sorcerers. Basically, Marcos and Joshua find themselves in the Rainbow Room. And before this mysterious room was fully formed, like this is way back in primitive history. And Marcos does something to actually bring about this miracle. I won't spoil it for those who might read it someday, but this is the description that Marcos gives of what takes place in the dark void where he finds himself in the ancient epochs of time. As I read it, I hope it'll somehow clarify some of my sentiments about dreams. It was as if we were witnessing an act not unlike the primordial act of creation, light becoming matter, matter becoming element, electricity forming into molecules. Joshua forgot to mention how some particles vibrated incessantly, like lightning flashes. This is how I might have imagined the universe would look when the gods first created a cosmic body, star, or planet in the midst of unorganized space, or how it appeared as they heaved the breath of life into a billion particles of dust. Joshua thought I was controlling it. I didn't believe this. God was making it happen. Nevertheless, I felt that it was happening because I somehow willed it to happen. Things were reacting to my creative imagination as if in harmony with a kind of music in my mind. It was influenced by Joshua too. Don't let him tell you otherwise. He sells himself short if he insists that he played no part. In a way, it was like a dream. I'd had many dreams where I didn't control the succession of events, where I felt I had no power over what I saw or what occurred. And yet, who else was in control? My brain was certainly the source of these images. They were part of my psyche. They were inspired by events from my previous day or from the previous years of my life. But not all of them. There was more to it than that. Some images, I was certain, had not originated in my mind. They were from somewhere else. I felt sure that dreams were not purely random events, not mere flashes of synaptic energy. Some other power in the universe also participated. And like my dreams, it was the same with what was occurring around us. I did not understand how all these shapes and colors came about, but somehow it was the power of my mind, combined with this other power, this mysterious, universal, celestial power that had set matter and elements free. So does that offer anybody any enlightenment about dreams? Yeah, probably not. In the end, it's all poetry. Maybe that's what dreams are. Poetry. A pure form of art. Maybe the purest. Something that might be interpreted differently or touch someone differently than it would touch anyone else. But in this case, the poem was a gift designed for just one person, just the dreamer. It's a work of art designed exclusively for you. So I suppose it's all still a mystery, but what a wonderful mystery. One of my favorites, as a matter of fact. And so, for the miracle of dreams, I express to my Heavenly Father my eternal gratitude. Thank you. Dreams have helped to support my family, and they've also made my life infinitely more interesting. Just promise me, Heavenly Father, that in the next life, some of these dreams will be explained to me. Please tell me why I had them, or what, if anything, I was supposed to learn thank you for joining me today on the Chris Heimerdinger channel. As always, stay close to the Lord. And if you don't feel as close to Jesus Christ today or to Heavenly Father today as you did yesterday, ask yourself, who moved? May God bless you and bless those that you love. See you next week on the Chris Heimerdinger channel.